September meeting of the Environmental Resources.
This meeting is being recorded.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to item number 3, public comment. No one is signed up to speak, so we'll move on to item number 4, approval of the August 1st, 2023 committee minutes. They were in your packets. Motion by Seefeld to approve. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Ritter. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Moving on to 5, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. A, public hearings, review possible actions and possible recommendations to the county before its consideration. County zoning changes, we have 5A, 1 through 3. To begin here, I'd ask that everyone please mute your phones and other electronic devices. Marathon County ERC is now meeting in public hearing on the location plans, specifications, and purpose of the following projects. 1, Ryan Gordon Lynn, commercial to rural residential, town of Brighton. 2, Larry and Patricia Lang, rural estates general agriculture, town of Spencer. And 3, town of Knowlton for text amendment changes to the general code of ordinances for Marathon County, chapter 17. Members of the committee present, Marilyn Bend, our Wisconsin Towns and Villages Association representative, Supervisor Seefeld, Supervisor Scherfinski, Supervisor Ritter, Supervisor Unger, Supervisor Drabeck, and myself, Supervisor Langenhan. We also have staff present to assist with the hearings as needed. The establishment of the ERC is required by laws for purposes of administration of county ordinances and land conservation programs. The committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. This committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinances or state laws, must apply the laws as written. The purpose of this committee is to hear and decide on proposed ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezoning petitions, and provide direction on land conservation planning programs. The ERC will give a full and fair hearing to any person applying for a rezone petition. Taped recording is being made of the meeting, which will assist with preparation of written hearing minutes. The committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allowing staff to present a staff report, including evidence from any on-site inspection. The applicant and anyone wishing to testify will be sworn in, allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in the order of those first in favor, second opposed, and then third as interested may appear. The committee may ask questions of zoning staff and applicant. It is necessary that we set a reasonable time limit on individual statements on the overall length of the hearing to promote orderly discussion. Anyone wishing to present oral testimony or ask questions relating to the hearing should state your name and present your testimony or questions so it becomes part of the official record. We request you avoid repetition. Once the committee has all the necessary facts, chairman will close the hearing, allowing no further testimony, and the committee will deliberate and decide for the public whether the applicant has met the standards in the ordinance. No additional testimony from the public is allowed during the deliberation. However, the committee may question staff for purposes of clarification. After a decision is made, the committee will proceed to the next hearing. Many of the decisions made by the committee are a recommendation to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, who will take up the matter at a future county board meeting. Please contact staff for more information regarding this county board process. The committee will now hear the application of 5A1. We have Ryan Gordon Lynn, commercial to rural residential, town of Brighton, and we will begin with our staff report provided by Garrett. Swear you in, Garrett. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Proceed.
All right, this is for Ryan Gordon Lynn, petition to rezone land, staff report September 5th, 2023 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Ryan Gordon Lynn, residing at 214053 State Highway 13, Unity, Wisconsin 54488. The property owner is Ryan Gordon Lynn at the same address. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on the west side of County Road F, approximately 0.5 miles north of the intersection of County Road F and State Highway 153. The petition of Ryan Gordon Lynn to amend the General Code of Ordinance for the Marathon County Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from C commercial to RR rural residential, described as all of Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map number 11922-51-10 and part of the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 22, Township 27 North, Range 2 East, Town of Brighton. The area proposed to be rezoned is described as Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map, identified as document number 1644173, parcel pin as shown. The Town of Brighton Town Board met on August 8th, 2023. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, September 5th, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On August 8th, 2023, the Town of Brighton Town Board recommended approval to the Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Hey, any questions for Garrett? All right, seeing none, thank you, Garrett. All right, and due to the packed house that we have here today, I'm going to call once for each of these as far as the order to testify. So I'll call first in favor, second opposed, and third as interested may appear. And to be clear, we're moving into the public testimony portion of the hearing. So for item 5A1, like I said, I'm calling once for each of these. If anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, we're under Ryan Gordon Lynn, commercial to rural residential, Town of Brighton. Please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify for this application, I am now declaring the public hearing on 5A1, Ryan Gordon Lynn, commercial to rural residential, Town of Brighton, now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. Supervisor Seefeld?
Thank you. I'll make a motion for the petition of Ryan Gordon Lynn to amend the general code of ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone land from C commercial to RR residential in the town of Brighton and to approve the conclusions of law and move it to the county board.
Motion made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Shafinsky. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 5A2, Larry and Patricia Lang, Rural Estates to General Agriculture, Town of Spencer, and we're back to Garrett.
All right, this is a petition of Larry and Patricia Lang, Revocable Living Trust, petition to rezone land. Staff report September 5th, 2023 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Larry and Patricia Lang, residing at 104094 West 26th Road, Marshfield, Wisconsin 54449. Property owner is Larry and Patricia Lang, Revocable Living Trust, residing at the same address. The area proposed to be rezoned is located on 26th Road, just west of the intersection of 26th Road and BB Road. The petition of Larry and Patricia Lang on behalf of Larry and Patricia Lang Revocable Living Trust to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 to rezone lands from RE Rural Estate to GA General Agriculture as described as Lot 3 of Certified Survey Map number 6949, document number 974333, recorded in volume 26 on page 142 and located in all of the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 21, Township 26 North, Range 2 East, Town of Spencer. The area to be rezoned to general agriculture is parent parcel as listed. Town of Spencer Town Board met on August 8th, 2023. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, September 5th, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On August 8, 2023, the Town of Spencer Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Yeah, I did have a question, Garrett. On page, it's 40 of the packet. It's part of the staff report. So I think it's the next one up. Yep. That's currently in yellow, which would be residential, right?
Correct. So in that smaller portion there is a residence there. That's
Okay.
actually the home residence. The adjacent parcel is also owned by Larry and Patricia. The reason that they're combining them and going to general agriculture is because they're wanting to build a shed, but there's a parcel line right there that splits those two that makes it too close, so they can't put their shed where they want to put it. And being that they own both parcels, they're combining those two parcels, but would have to rezone because the smaller is rural estate.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Garrett? Okay. Thanks, Garrett. All right. Similar to our last hearing, due to the limited number of people here, I'm going to call once for each one of these. First in favor, second opposed, and third is interested. So for 5A2, anybody wishing to speak in favor of rezone 5A2, Larry and Patricia Lang, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing none, anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 5A2, Larry and Patricia Lang rezone, please identify yourself at this time. And anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 5A2, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing as that no one else wishes to testify for this application, I am now declaring the public hearing on Larry and Patricia Lang, Rural Estates of General Agriculture, Town of Spencer, now closed. Committee will now deliberate on the application and apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. Supervisor Seefeld.
Thank you. I'll make a motion for the petition of Larry and Patricia Lang on behalf of Larry and Patricia Lang Revocable Living Trust to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17, to rezone land from RE Rural Residential to GA General Agriculture in the Town of Spencer, and to pass the conclusions of law and move it on to the county board.
Motion is made, second by Supervisor Drabek. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. We are on to 5A3, Town of Knowlton for text amendment changes to the General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County, Chapter 17. Chad, do I swear you in?
Mine as well, just to
Yeah.
be safe.
All right. Chad, do you tell the truth? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, go ahead.
All right. So last month we had a little bit of some direction on where to edit the Town of Knowlton's chicken ordinance. And I'll go through that in a little bit. We did reach back out to the townships. We got a response from McMillan, was the only town we've heard back from. And the update that they had, they felt that rural estate shouldn't be included in the change, which in what we've written, nothing changes for rural estate because it's kind of that zoning district that's between, I call it the hobby farm zoning district. It's in between residential and it's in between agriculture, so it's kind of that in-between zoning district. They also felt that fowl should be struck from them and only chickens would be allowed in residential areas. I know we discussed this the last time, and that's one of the changes that we made coming into this. It was we wanted to prevent some of the louder or more disturbing birds or fowl that would be allowed on the property. And I did call the town chair and the plan commission chair, and they both said the reason for that was they just wanted to prevent the peacocks and things like that, which that is addressed in the ordinance we proposed here. And so we'll kind of get into what we have proposed. So essentially what we had changed for the rural estate and CVRC district, we just crossed out chickens and put fowl, because in those districts, it would be any type of fowl would be allowed in that. Like I said, the rural estate is like that hobby farm. It's 5 acres or more. The CVRC district, that one, it's a recreational district. There is some agricultural uses that are allowed in there. Most of the time, county parks and stuff are CVRC districts, things like that. Getting into the residential districts, what we did, again, we struck chickens and the peacock language in there, and then just under it, just left it as fowl. But we've kind of described what types of fowl would be allowed, including chickens, hens only, no roosters, ducks, quail, pheasants, partridge, and grouse. We tried to incorporate some of the birds that we felt wouldn't cause a big disturbance if they had them in the residential districts. And again, the max total of 6 fowl for lots 5 acres to 0.99 acres, and a max total of 12 fowl for lots 1 acre or greater. That was just to allow for if somebody had 2 acres, they'd be able to have 12 birds versus 6. And very similarly in the LDR and UR districts, we kept that very similar to the change in rural residential as well. Just to make it a little bit more clear as to what a fowl is, we did define fowl. Domestic birds commonly kept for showing, breeding, production of meat, eggs, or feathers, which shall include but not be limited to chickens, ducks, geese, swans, turkeys, pigeons, quail, partridge, grouse, pheasants, peafowl, guinea fowl, ostrich, and emus. Now, again, that definition is defining fowl. In the residential districts, we just restricted it to a certain kinds of fowl that are allowed. And I feel that's kind of the direction the committee asked staff to go in, was just kind of define a little bit better of what fowl would be allowed in the residential districts. And the response we got from McMillan, again, that was just essentially they were concerned about fowl being loud if we allowed geese or peacocks. They felt that would be a disruption in some of those smaller communities. So that was their concern and why they wanted to restrict the types of fowl. I'd be happy to ask any questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, I had one. So as far as McMillan's comments, though, that's only pertaining to rural estates, or was that pertaining to?
So that's pertaining to all our residential districts. So rural residential, LDR, and the UR district. Mm-hmm. So the way they had said it in their minutes is they'd struck fowl and they just wanted to keep it as chickens only.
Sure, but when I'm reading rural residential on 26, well, it's 26 in the, yeah. It says allowed fowl includes chickens, ducks, quails, pheasants, and partridge, grouse. It doesn't say anything about emus or ostriches, which I would think
Correct.
are the problematic birds.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Potentially problematic.
Yep.
So.
And I did call them to confirm that. It sounds like they had a little bit of confusion as to the ordinance versus the Knowlton petition, because the
Okay.
Knowlton's petition strictly says fowl and chickens. So they re-reviewed the Knowlton's petition at their meeting. So when I called them, I just wanted to get an understanding of why they felt fowl needed to be struck, and it was for those more disruptive birds, which I feel that aspect of it has been addressed with our ordinance by not allowing some of those noisier fowl.
Mr. Chairman, is Knowlton satisfied with the changes?
We did not get any response back from Knowlton as far as these additional changes from the first go-around. So I have nothing indicating that they aren't okay with it.
Which I guess the follow-up is, just to confirm my understanding, on 25, it says rural estate and CVRC. There the term fowl is used with no restriction under 2, which then you would look at the definition on 193 for foul to determine that. Got it.
Correct, yep.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Other questions? Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering on the structures that the birds would be in. Are these like permanent structures you're talking? Or we had discussed last time a little bit about the mobile ones. I got some pictures of some mobile ones. They're actually look very comfortable. They look like they would hold in well. Is that also included on that they could use those?
So right now, our ordinance essentially says they have to be fenced in. If you had a mobile type coop, I would think that would be allowed as long as you abided by our normal setbacks. So if I believe it's 25 feet from the property line for accessory structures with animals that are in there. So as long as you went along with our setbacks, I don't think there would be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Follow-up then, is structure defined?
There is definition of structure. If anything, for example, if you have something that's highway ready, it's not really a structure, like if you can hook it up to your car or a trailer, which I have seen some of those mobile chicken coops, and some of them have used trailers in the past, like enclosed trailers they've converted or things like that. If it's highway ready, if it's mobile in that way, it wouldn't be considered a structure. We have minor structures, which are anything under 100 square feet. We do ask for a permit for those just to make sure they're abiding by setbacks, but there's no fee associated with those types
Sure.
of structures. So.
I have one more question. Some of these towns are zoned and some are not. If there is a zoned town that goes by these setbacks and everything, and a town that is not zoned, doesn't have any setbacks, is there going to be any potential conflict?
This would only apply to county-zone towns. So the only way I could see a potential conflict would be potentially if a town came into county zoning and that individual already had animals on their property. We would have to, essentially, we would have to allow them to keep what they have. If they wanted to expand, they'd have to be in compliance with our code, but I don't foresee any conflicts as far as unless a town would come into county zoning from not being in county zoning.
Okay. So as far as the mobile coops, though, you would say that would fall in as long as it abides by the setbacks?
Yep, as long as it abides by the setback. Right now, I believe
That one you had.
a fenced enclosure and covered structure shall be maintained and kept in a sanitary condition as to not create a nuisance.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think that would,
Supervisor Drabek was showing me a picture. I thought the coop was on top of like a snowmobile trailer, and I said, I don't think that's gonna, I think that would be highway ready, but no,
well, and the chicken coop doesn't, you don't have to pull your chickens down the highway by
Yeah.
any means, but it's just, yeah, as long as we're maintaining the setbacks from the house, from the property lines, I don't think it'll be an issue as far as getting those permitted. It's something that I can see it being valuable if people want to move them around their yard, so it's not killing the one spot of their yard.
Yep. Yep. Well, and to be fair, upon second review, it wasn't on a trailer. It was just a movable one. So, okay. Any other questions? All right. We still do public testimony, I believe, for this. So, is everybody online, staff? Or got it. Okay. Well, like I said, I'll make this pretty quick then. So, thank you, Shad. Appreciate it. All right. Public testimony. Again, we've got a packed house. Not really. So we'll call once for each of these. First in favor, second opposed, third as interested may appear. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of 5A3, Town of Knowlton for text amendment changes to the General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County, Chapter 17, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing none, anybody wishing to speak as opposed to item 5A3, please identify yourself at this time. And finally, anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 5A3, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing as how nobody else wishes to testify on behalf of this ordinance, for the ordinance, I am now declaring the public hearing for the town of Knowlton for text amendment changes to the General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County, Chapter 17, now closed. Based on the input that we had from the town of Knowlton last month, and of course, if the town of Knowlton had any additional thoughts, I would, of course, pull this back to the committee and we would have more review. So I just want to put that out there as well. But I think it's appropriate to forward this to help them out with the chickens. So, Supervisor Ritter.
Thank you. I would make a motion to approve this item 5A3 as written today with this new verbiage.
Okay. Motion is made, second by Supervisor Sherfinsky. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving right along, we are on to, Chad's gonna pass out some literature, it looks like. We got 5B, none, C, or 5C, we have none, 5D, we have none. 6, educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports, committee discussion. A, department updates, conservation planning and zoning, park rec and forestry, solid waste. 1, update on Pouts replacement funding opportunities. And it looks like Lori's gonna talk to us.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to give a brief update on 2 funding programs that are out there right now related to replacing failing pouts, to get you guys sort of to help us be ambassadors in terms of promoting these funding programs, which could only be available sometimes for a short time. So the first I wanted to give an update on is the McDevco loan program. You're all familiar with that. That's the loan program that we have discussed historically, that prior to COVID, we had some troubles getting it off the ground. We were able to renegotiate with McDevco earlier this year, and starting in July and August, we started outreaching to landowners and about the loan program. We're actually doing our first review of 4 applications tomorrow. In total, between this program and the Wisconsin Fund program, we've probably outreached to about 200 landowners right now. So the McDevco loan program, an applicant can now borrow up to 100% of the funds they need to replace a failing septic system. The interest rate is 3%, and we're using HUD income guidelines and different levels there. So there's more eligibility in terms of people who could qualify for a loan, whereas before it was capped at that $45,000 level. And we didn't see a lot of people who were low enough that they could actually even qualify to get a loan. So now we've opened up those income restrictions to try and target those moderate income landowners as well, who still may not be able to finance a septic repair without some kind of loan funds. So we're starting to circulate that information for the last 2 months. I know McDevco's had several in-person meetings with landowners. What they're doing is they're packaging them as soon as they're ready to go before a committee and then determine if we can give them some funding to get that system replaced. So again, we're going to review 4 applications tomorrow. So that's our first batch, which is great, and we expect many more in the months to come. I see Marilyn has a question, so I'll pause and then I'll talk about the Wisconsin Fund. Yeah.
Did they lower their application fee? I surely hope so.
The application fee is $150, and we do have something written in there for the lowest income bracket. There is a way that we can waive that fee, so.
That $400 fee was not good.
Sounds like it was reduced from 400 to 150.
There's some other, there's always going to be closing costs involved too. I think that 400 involved everything on both ends. But with the new program, we have opportunities where we can waive some of those fees, or they can also be rolled into the loan depending on what the closing costs end up being and things like that. So,
Fair.
So there's opportunities to reduce the barriers for the landowners. So.
I'll have a question for you later after the meeting.
Okay. So at the same time, when we were rolling out the McDevco loan program, we did hear from the state that the Wisconsin Fund program has been approved again. There is some nuances that they're working out related to the funding. So the program has been approved for 23 to 25, but they still have some legal jargon to work out in terms of getting the funding actually available. But in our discussions with them, they did encourage that we notify landowners as soon as possible, because their final notification of the program could come really late this year, and they're probably still going to have that ultimate deadline of February of next year, so we don't want people to be scrambling at the last minute to try and get applications together. So for those who aren't familiar, the way the Wisconsin Fund works is the application does have to come through CPZ's office, and then we submit it to the state on their behalf. So we've always done traditionally a deadline sometime in December, so that if the landowner is missing certain pieces, we can work with them and still have 1 to 2 months to get everything together to get that application submitted in time for the state. So right now, we're just saying kind of nebulous, December will be your deadline, but once we have more information from the state, we'll refine that with the landowners. This is still, the program looks like it's going to be identical in the sense that the income is going to be capped at adjusted gross income for everyone who's listed as an owner. It has to be $45,000 or below. And they have to have a verification of a failure and a sanitary permit with our office. So that's what we're working to notify people to at least get that far in the process. The Wisconsin Fund is also a reimbursable program, which means they do incur all the costs up front and then they get reimbursed after the fact. And typically, historically, that grant has been capped at about $7,000. So the most a landowner could probably qualify for is $7,000. So what we are doing is actually trying to market both at the same time, with the idea that a person could borrow all the money they need through the McDevco loan program, and then if they are approved for that grant funding through the Wisconsin Fund, or if we know they're going to be applying for that grant funding, we'll actually work with McDevco and the landowner to make sure if they receive that funding, they can then use it to pay back a portion of their McDevco loan. So then we keep replenishing the loan pot for our landowners. So. Go ahead.
One question. So the type of failures are defined.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't see, or maybe I'm just missing it, who documents the actual existence of the failure?
This guy. No, okay.
So what staff has to go out and verify it.
Yep, so either staff have to go out and verify it, or a certified professional like a soil tester would do a soil test on the property, and then CPZ staff would review the soil test, and if it indicated failure, that would count as well.
Most of the time, I would say all the time, you're getting notified by a pumper, right? Yeah.
In a lot of circumstances, when like the maintenance program, the pumpers go out there and they'll see surface discharge or something like that, and that's what they report to us, and then we'll go out and confirm that surface discharge.
Thank you.
Is there still the option of holding tanks versus mound systems?
So with the type of system, it really depends on the soil test. If the soil test comes back and says it's suitable for a mound site or a conventional system, Marathon County is a holding tank last resort. So they would have to go for either the mound or the conventional before they would be allowed to have the holding tank.
Okay, other questions? So based on this then, excuse me, the person gets notified that they have a failing system, and then our staff informs them of their financial options, right? Either McDevco through the loan program or through the Wisconsin Fund with the state?
So we'll notify them that we have the failure, and then we will provide them with some funding resource opportunities as well for them to
Okay.
pursue. Again, we've probably notified over 200 landowners, but some of them will definitely, the vast majority probably will not be eligible for the Wisconsin Fund, but the bigger majority should be eligible for the loan.
For the McDevco piece. I don't know if it's ever been specified in the policy, but can they receive both?
Yes, and
Okay.
yes, that, we have worked that out so that they can
Okay.
receive both. Just that the grant money, if it is received from the Wisconsin Fund, we would identify with them in their loan that they need to use that to repay a portion of the loan. So-
Well, I just would hate to see somebody, if they were eligible for Wisconsin Fund through a grant, and then have to go through the loan system when they could have gotten $7,000 of that $20,000, $30,000 price tag, whatever it is these days, paid for by the state. So, yeah.
They can
okay.
get both, yes.
Cool.
That's why we're kind of pairing them together and trying to market them, because again, they won't get that grant funding sometimes for 2 to 3 years after they've replaced the system. So
Sure.
if they need to borrow the money up front to get that failure fixed, then that's
Okay.
what the loan program can help do, so.
Okay. Other questions? Supervisor Drabeck.
Thank you, sir. I was just wondering, now, when it started out, originally, the money had to be paid back when the land changed hands. It had to be, and now it's not that way, right? Now that you just pay the interest and you make
Correct.
payments, or?
Yeah, so we are, the payments, McDevco will set up payments based on what the landowner is able to do. So they're variable payments, depending on what their income is actually and what they think they can pay back, so.
All right, anything else?
And so please definitely share with your constituents about these funding opportunities. We really want to get the word out there, especially with the Wisconsin Fund, because we think that window will be pretty narrow in terms of when people can apply. Now, they might, there is always the chance at the last minute the state decides to wait and do it next year. We can't control that, but we don't want people to miss the opportunity, so they might as well start getting the pieces together that they need in the event they do go forward and get the funding in place. So,
One thing I'll do, and I know you emailed me, we had some long board meetings last month. Hopefully they won't be as long this month. I'll include this as part of a standing committee report that I'll provide to the board too, to let the other members know.
that'd be great. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, anything else? All right. 6A2, Wisconsin Land and Water Survey for member to inform strategic plan.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just have a very brief update that I wanted to pass on to you from Wisconsin Land and Water. They asked me just to communicate this to you. As a reminder, this is the statewide organization that you are all members of since you serve in a capacity as our Land Conservation Committee that every county has. Supervisor Ritter is serving on the board of directors for this organization currently, so he's very involved in their strategic planning. What they are preparing to do is they are preparing to really focus on a strategic planning effort going into 2024. And so what that means is that they rely very heavily on input from our Land Conservation Committee members from around the state. So they wanted me to let you know that next week they are going to launch a campaign where they're going to start asking both county land conservation department staff members like myself and my coworkers, and then the land conservation committee members like you. They're going to send 2 separate surveys. And what they've seen in the past is not always great participation from committee members, because a lot of it just happens to be by email. And you guys are so overwhelmed with the amount of emails that you receive. I know what it's like. Sometimes it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other. So we just wanted to communicate to you that your input going into Wisconsin Land and Water strategic planning efforts is very, very vital. And they are hoping that you will take the time to look at this survey that is going to be sent to you next week, and that you can take even maybe just 5 minutes out of your schedule to read through those questions thoroughly and kind of see, from your perspective, what you would like the future of conservation to look like, not only in Marathon County, but also in the state of Wisconsin. So Wisconsin Land and Water traditionally holds just a ton of weight, in the Wisconsin legislature related to, bills related to agriculture and conservation and our soil and our water. And so you're all a part of their efforts. And so if you are not able to access that survey via email, or you would prefer a hard copy, I can get that for you. If you want me to give you a phone call and we can go over the survey over the phone and I can fill out your answers for you and send them in, I'm totally game for that as well. I just wanted to let you know it's very, very important. And, our county continues to be a leader in conservation in the state of Wisconsin, and you guys are the leaders of our conservation efforts as well. So your input is very, very important. So any questions or comments on that? No? Okay.
We'll
Great.
stay tuned for the email next week then.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. They will also have kind of a virtual listening session the first week of October that you'll receive that email as well, but I'll just send you a personal reminder. If you are invested in being a bigger part of this conversation, I would encourage you just to join via Zoom for a little 1-hour meeting they're having as well, where you can, provide further input and commentary through that process as well. So,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. We are on to 7? Yeah, 7. Policy issues, discussion, and potential committee determination. A, overview of the farmland preservation plan update and review of public participation plan.
So I'll kind of kick off this topic as well, and then I'm going to hand the baton to Kirk. So this is kind of the first in a series of communication that you'll receive from our department related to Marathon County's farmland preservation plan. So you all received a link to our previous farmland preservation plan in your packet. I know you all read through it all and memorized it leading up to this meeting, so we really don't even need to touch base on it. But as you all know, agriculture is at the heart of our culture here in Marathon County. And so this plan really is very important and a powerful guiding document that we look to frequently when we're discussing policy making, when we're discussing resource prioritization, and then even just, the future of economic planning in our county is very driven by agriculture. And so Kirk is going to do just a brief presentation for you all today related to updating our farmland preservation plan, because the time has come to get that updated and just make it all slick and shiny and new. And so we do want you guys to be involved in that process, and we will just leave it up to you kind of how much you really want to sink your teeth into some of this. As Kirk will go over, there was a really intensive rewrite of this at one time already. So we're hoping that, we don't have to completely toss it away and start from scratch, but we feel pretty confident how we're moving forward. And we're just going to rely on you guys to let us know if you would like to dig into some of the subject matter at a different depth than kind of what we plan on going over with you. Like we feel good about the action plan that we have, but please communicate to us if there are certain portions of this that you really think are vital to take a look at as a committee and continually add it to an agenda so we can get it updated appropriately in the plan. So Kirk is going to talk to you guys. I know he maybe even hasn't met part of our committee, the newer members. So Kirk is one of our conservation analysts, one of our senior staff members. And just a couple of days ago, he celebrated his 26th anniversary at Marathon County. So we are so lucky to have him. So I'll let you take it away, Kirk.
So good afternoon, everyone. Let me know if I'm not close enough to catch it up on the microphone. So yeah, I recognize a few faces. I think Marilyn, I've seen you since the beginning 26 years ago. Yeah, a quick 26 years. So yeah, I'm sort of the face of farmland preservation in Marathon County since I've been working with it for 26 years, and actually 4 years prior to that when I was in Northwest Wisconsin. But like Kirsty had said, we're going to just touch a little bit on the update to the Marathon County Farmland Preservation Plan. So as the slide will say, and this is really the foundation, it's part of the Marathon County Comprehensive Plan. It really is a part of the plan that addresses the agricultural element. And like Kirsty had said, agriculture is such a vital industry and part of Marathon County. So it's the planning portion. It's really the agricultural element of the comp plan. Other things that's required by the state of Wisconsin for counties and landowners, not only Marathon County but other counties in the state, for them and their landowners to participate in other portions of the farmland preservation program. And I definitely won't go into full detail on this today, but such as farmland preservation zoning, which I know you've probably heard with Shad and Garrett talk before about the zoning end of things. There's also what's called agricultural enterprise areas, which are basically, I like to say, it's like an industrial park for agriculture. There's two areas in Marathon County, in the western part of the county, Heart of America's Dairyland, and then in the eastern part by the Antigo Flats are considered designated as what they call agricultural enterprise areas because of their unique and their important benefits to agriculture. It also allows farmland preservation agreement participation, so that's a mechanism for landowners to participate in the program. And then the bottom line, as the fourth bullet point says, the farmland preservation tax credits, which is one of the main reasons landowners will participate to receive a tax credit for following good agricultural practices on their land. So having a plan in place is a requirement of the state for those participations. Like I said, I guess the next one is establishes a local vision for agricultural preservation, agricultural development, and also agricultural enterprise at the county level. So it's really how we determine we want agriculture, what the face of agriculture will look like in Marathon County. And then it's a guidance document to help the county and the towns in the county establish policies to protect farmland for the future. So just a little bit about what are some of the requirements of the Farmland Preservation Plan. I won't go into detail, but there's a state chapter, Wisconsin Statute Chapter 91, and then Administrative Code ATCP 49 that regulate farmland preservation and specifies what's in the plan, what the programs are about, et cetera. The plan has to be certified by the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, DATCAP. It has to be updated and recertified every 10 years. That's different now. Kirsty did touch on. We did prior to 10 years ago in 2013, 2014 is our last update, and that was a very comprehensive update, and I'll touch on that in a bit. But prior to that, it was 1982 was the last time the county's plan was updated. So some 30-odd years, 31, 32 years. But now it's on a regular, required to be updated regularly every 10 years. And then also, where we get involved, it's adopted by the county board. The Board of Supervisors has to approve the plan in the end. So current plan, if you did look at the information in the package, I think there's a website link to it. On the right-hand side of the slide is just a cover of what our current plan is. It says it's 2023 to 2028, 2013 to 2028. That's a 15-year time window. It's actually 10, but we do a 15-year lookout when we do the planning. So we're looking 15 years into the future. As Kirsty had mentioned, that was a long process. I worked a little on the periphery of helping at that time, but different staff members that were our planning staff member and our environmental resources coordinator at that time spent the majority of 3 years working on updating that plan. Lots of public input, lots of work with the towns, getting input and engagement. And it was based upon also, there was an extensive survey done in 2013 of what people wanted or what people thought agriculture should be in Marathon County. So that was kind of the foundation for that original plan. I'll call that basically a comprehensive rewrite, because that was a rewrite of the 82 plan. What we're talking about now is really more of just an update. Tweaking a little bit, like I mentioned, it'll be based largely upon the current Farmland Preservation Plan. It's going to incorporate significant portions of the plan as it exists. And then the other thing, agricultural, like every industry, has changed some, but there hasn't been a wholesale change in the last 10 years. So a lot of what was important and put in place 10 years ago is still applicable today. It'll be updated, yet similar to the current plan. It'll have goals and objectives. One thing that will change is the comprehensive plan's been updated in 2016, so it'll align better with the current comprehensive plan with the goals and objectives and strategies of the current county comprehensive plan. One of the biggest changes you'll see is a format and layout. Me as, I guess, the kind of the primary architect of the plan, I'm kind of redoing it a little bit. It's going to be more graphical, more picture-oriented charts, less textual. The old plan, I think, had about 80 pages of text. This will probably have maybe 40, a little more concise and a little more what I call user-friendly. I'll be honest, reading through the old one, I get a little lost sometimes, so hopefully this will be a little more user-friendly for everybody involved. Last bullet point here, farmland preservation maps will be extensively reviewed and updated. There's an individual map for each of the 39 towns in the county that designates the areas that should be preserved for farmland preservation versus other uses, commercial development, et cetera. And the last go around, the plans looking at them now weren't real consistent from town to town. And since this is a county farmland preservation plan, we're really looking at having consistency between what we call important agricultural land in one town versus another. So we're looking for more consistency from the previous plan. Okay, rounding things out a little bit. So Kirsty mentioned it's kind of up to you how much you want to become engaged in it. I know today, I think we have virtually Jeff Pritchard, which you've probably met before, the county planner. He's going to talk to you a little bit today about the public participation plan, which is a big element of the plan update. So he's going to touch on that a little bit, but I also wanted maybe at least plant a seed in your mind about, are there any policy discussions or input that you would like to provide? We've all probably are aware that, right now, big topics are wind and solar in the county. Do we want to have a little bit more of an element on that wasn't really addressed real specifically in a previous plan? And then any other topics or issues that you think may be important. So I'll leave it at that at this point. I think it's maybe just to plant a seed in your mind to think about maybe, if you have any specific ideas today, let us know. Otherwise, if you ruminate over some things over the next week or something, let Kirsty or myself know if there's certain things that you might think. And again, it's going to take a little bit of research from the old plan to know what was in that, to look at what we're looking at in the future. But is there any topic that we didn't really address? And I think wind and solar might be one of the biggest ones. So that's all I have.
I guess I have a question. If you go back to the last slide there, for wind and solar energy, and don't get me wrong, there's other things we could talk about. We could talk about farm ownership for the firms that exist outside of the state coming into this county and buying up land. I know that's another one that's been focused on recently. But as far as the county's ability to do anything about some of those issues, I mean, are we just talking about general commentary here, or what's the purpose of having something like that touched on as part of the plan?
Yeah, I guess it's really up to you, and Kirsty, I guess chime in if you want. But if you think it's something, it wasn't really addressed in the last plan, and I'm not saying that it necessarily has to be, but the idea is that we're looking at agriculture as a whole. What's important to be preserved in the future? Are there some issues that we may think are important to consider? I guess it's really up to you as our guiding committee to let us know, is this something you want us to touch on? It really wasn't touched on in the previous plan.
So I don't know if I would say policy then. That's the part I struggle with. As far as providing commentary, I get that, but there's two sides to that, right? You can provide commentary on anything that you like, if you can do anything about it. I think that's completely different.
Yep. Yeah. So maybe policy is maybe not the correct word.
There'd have to be some word selection there, I think. I'm not opposed to doing that, but, I've talked a lot in the past about what we can and can't do as a county.
Mm-hmm.
So, Supervisor Shafinsky, then Marilyn.
Thank you, Chair. And this may come under the heading of something that we cannot regulate, so I understand that, but I guess it's one that comes to mind, and that is from the perspective of solar. There are numerous ways, of course, that any of these systems can be installed and make use of land. Some solar systems can be installed at a height and with the geometry, so to speak, that can coexist with agriculture or certain types of agriculture. But then there are other geometries and system designs where you have solar panels that basically cover the land at a 4-foot height and are completely incompatible with agriculture. I do think it's important that we do try and incorporate some sort of a statement if we feel that we want to encourage that says, farmland preservation is important to us, and it does really become a question of priorities and which is more important, or if we're going to see some type of a alternative energy system, that we at least go on record that it has to be compatible with agricultural use. Just my thoughts.
On this, they had been talking about a change of the contract years. Is that going through, or is it still staying the same as what it has previously been?
Yeah, so originally it was anywhere between 10 and 25 years, and that changed in 2011 with what they call the Working Lands Initiative. Now it's a flat 15-year time period, but there has been talk about reducing that to 10. There's also been significant talk about increasing tax credits, at the state level. So where that might go with the legislature, it's not. I don't have a crystal ball, but.
The other thing I was just going to say is I want to go back and review the 2013 plan to see essentially the formula that was used back then, because I'd like to keep things somewhat consistent if possible. I know it's 10 years later, but those are just my thoughts. Okay, anything else? You had another section, right, Matt?
No, I did not.
Okay.
No, Kirk. That's fine.
Sorry.
Yep, that's all right.
Kirk.
No
Sorry,
problem.
my bad.
I'm not good with names and faces, especially the older I get. Jeff, I think, is Jeff on board with us? Jeff Harris. Because I know he was going to talk to you briefly about the public participation plan, but
Jeff, can you hear us?
modern technology. Let me see his again. I don't know if you can call in.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Jeff.
Oh, okay, very good. Thank you. Yeah, I can give a brief update on the public participation plan, and if you have any questions, I can answer any questions from the committee members. But essentially, the public participation plan is a requirement by DADCAP, and that is simply to ensure that we make sure that everyone has an opportunity to have some type of input throughout various points of the development of the plan. So one of the most important things with this is that we do farmland preservation maps for county zone towns, town zone towns, and non-zone towns. So it's important that we give an opportunity for all those members or units of government an opportunity to engage with us, to ask questions, to modify their maps based on specific criteria that's established by DADCAP, and ensure that we take input from them and that we inform them and that they can also inform us as well. So it's rather important that the public participation plan is interactive, it's informative, and the opportunities are there. So, but that's basically the gist of the public participation plan. Now, of course, it goes in line with the approval process, and it gives the skeleton, if you will, of the process and our process in terms of how we're going to proceed up to the approval of the plan once it's approved by DADCAP. Any questions?
Any questions for Jeff?
For those who have been around for the comprehensive plan, it's a very similar concept that we used in the comprehensive plan as well.
I'm sorry, I'm just wondering when this needs to be done by?
The approval of the participation plan or the overall public participation plan?
Right, the overall. Give me a timeline on how this is all going to work.
Hopefully the ERC committee will review the public participation plan that's presented before you, and that will then establish the format for which we will proceed to engage public participation. This document will also be incorporated into the plan as most likely an appendix, demonstrating to DADCAP that we adhere to their process as well.
And I can just add on to that too. So
Can I have dates? I'm curious.
that's what I was just going to build
Okay,
off
thank
of.
you.
Yeah, so we do have a very detailed timeline, which we spared you all from putting in your packets because it's like a good 10 pages long. So we've got it down. Is my mic on, Laurie? Yeah. Oh, I think it's okay. Yeah, it's good. But we are hoping to have the draft of the updated plan done by the end of this year. So before we go on Christmas break, we're kind of aiming to have that done and ready to go. We would like to share it with you all at that point so you can have a look at it. And then starting in early 2024, so probably the January ERC meeting, we're going to start putting an agenda item on pretty much every ERC meeting for a couple of months. And it'll say, public participation for the farmland preservation draft. So we'll get that uploaded online. First, we kind of need your blessing to do that, but we'll just kind of keep you posted along the way. But, hopefully in the next 3 months here, we'll get you the draft of that plan. In terms of approving this plan today, we're just asking kind of in good faith that you say, this looks good to us. We feel comfortable with how, you're moving forward. As you can see, reading through the plan, it's very basic in terms of how we want to, allow public to comment on the plan, and then also just make ourselves available for help with any of the towns that may want some help. A big thing for the towns when we update these plans is they have the opportunity to update their maps. And so Jeff and Kirk have already been diving into that, taking a look at parcels that no longer will work to be in the farmland preservation map, some that maybe we missed the first time around. So those maps are really what's the most important to them. So in our public participation plan, you'll see that we're going to be holding an open house or two specifically just for the town officials to come and talk with us. And, we'll pull their maps up on the computers and work with them. But we're thinking that if any, non-governmental public have input that they would like to provide to the plan, we felt it would be most appropriate for them to come here and talk to us and you all together during these meetings.
So then, from what I'm hearing, draft late December, and then more substantive discussions take place in spring with this group. So when does this participation plan get implemented throughout the process, like before the writing, or is it only after the draft?
Yes, we already have, in our timeline of events, we already have the dates for ERC meetings. We'd like to put the farmland preservation plan on agenda items. We have a rough date for our couple of town hall type of meetings we'd like to have, or open houses, I should call them. So we already have that pre-built in. We just assumed you all would probably feel pretty good about this very basic plan we had put together. We do want to have everything said and done by the end of next year. And of course, we don't want to wait until December of 2024. So, going into the fourth quarter of 2024, first we need ERC to feel good about it, approve it, and then we do need to take it to full county board. So we want to have everything updated, case closed by the end of 2024. Oh, you need a mic, Kirk.
Yes, the current plan expires December 31st of 2024, so, a year and 4 months or so. So that's what we're looking at.
But does any public input get taken into consideration as part of that writing for the end of December, or where are the inputs coming from?
Yeah, so it's going to be very similar. Like I mentioned, you're going to see the look of the plan is going to be quite a bit different, but a lot of the textual content will be very similar. I guess we hadn't at this point. I thought it made sense, or I think it makes sense to at least get a rough draft out there for people to look at before they comment.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just trying to understand the process for drafting.
Excuse me, yes.
I would agree with that process. Okay. Marilyn?
One other thing, Dick, do you think it'd be beneficial to have anything presented at the October Wisconsin Marathon County unit meetings or not?
That's not my call.
Okay. Well, you know somebody that we could talk to.
Other questions? If not, this has my blessing. Does everybody else feel comfortable with it? Okay, very good. Thank you both.
We'll keep you posted.
All right, moving on, we have 7B, continued discussion regarding 2024 annual budget and policy recommendations from the committee. B1, review summary memos from Conservation Planning and Zoning, Parks and Solid Waste. I think everybody had something in the packet, which was good. So, Lori, did you want to start with CPZ?
Yeah, hold on
Okay.
just a second here. Thank you. Okay, hold on. Okay, so at the end of the last meeting, or the end of the last discussion on the budget, The direction I believe the departments received from this committee was to go back and summarize the discussions that we've had related to sort of examining our budgets, targeted improvements for the coming years, things like that. So each department did put together a summary memo in terms of things that we highlighted when we discussed with you all and improvements we're targeting. For CPZ, a couple of the recaps had to do with just, again, explaining the breakdown of our funding with only an average of 35% coming from the levy, and the remaining of the budget we make up with grants and agreements and revenue from fees. The question had also been posed, how many grant-funded positions do we have within CPZ? It is an average of about 7 positions, depending on how much grant funding we receive every year. We also did that fees analysis that we brought to the ERC. I believe that was in May or June. So we summarized that again with the major discussion coming out of that conversation, that we have not updated our non-metallic mining permit fees in 4 years, and per the state statutes, we do need to try and recoup as close to 100% of our costs, or we're allowed to recoup 100% of our costs. So we are completing a more thorough analysis now to bring those fees up to recoup those costs in 2024. A couple other things we discussed through the meetings with you all were other opportunities for process and technological improvements. So just highlighting some of the things that CPZ is working on. We're really trying to expand our use of digital and technology to create more efficient processes, including getting laptops and tablets into the field so that our inspections can complete some of their what would typically be office work while they're also in the field, hopefully getting more done out there. We're also looking at strategizing or organizing our routes to some degree better too, where we can. Sometimes that's not always within our control in terms of that, but getting our inspection routes a little more organized so that when they're out there, they're getting as much done as possible, for sure. We continue to look at expanding the use of our website and phone capabilities, and even considering the use of AI-like tools for certain administrative functions where, like could a chat bot help people online answering questions at times, things like that. In 2023, we also started making sanitary permits available online to plumbers, and we continue to try and improve our capabilities for pumpers and maintainers to do online reporting. This is all sort of an evolving process in terms of how well the Ascent system works for some of these things and working out some of the bugs and kinks, but it is getting easier for them to do more things online. So that's kind of where we focus a lot of our efforts. And also, as a reminder, CPZ did take on the real property listing, parcel mapping, and assessment functions in the last year. So that's something, we haven't had a full year with those processes yet, but that is something we're also going to be targeting and looking at for where we can streamline process and operation and supply costs on those programs in the coming year. So, and then I believe Jamie is up next for Parks.
Thank you. Mine is similar to Lori's, looks a little bit different, but essentially the information is pretty much the same. Just a little overview of our department and what we manage, and then a lot about that levy support analysis that we presented to the committee about what we're planning to do and what we're looking at. We've already done a deep dive into our fees that we're looking at. That's constant every year. We're doing that. Park Commission actually reviewed them for 2024 and 2025 this afternoon, but I highlighted, what our goals of our levy support analysis were, and then our revenue breakdown showing that our city reimbursement is 51% of our revenue, and then county revenue is 21%, and then county tax levy is 28%, and then of the county side of it, it's broken down into what the revenue is that we bring in for our department, since we have a pretty good revenue side to our operations. And that is an area we can always keep focusing on as we look at the facilities and the programs that we offer. And that's part of that levy support analysis and the action steps. We've got short-term, medium-term, long-term action steps. And like we're talking about is the sponsorship guide to try to get some different forms of revenue in, doing some public outreach to really see what our community is wanting from us, and then looking at the fees to go along with that. And then as we look at facilities and programs that we currently have, what can we invest in that could have a return on investment higher than what it has now? And then as we go out using some of that information and doing some larger tasks, looking at carbon credits, looking at different ways we might be doing fees within our parks, that's one thing we have to look at is right now we have fees for many different uses, but not all the uses. So we'll be looking at what we possibly could add or combine that would make it easier for our community to purchase and want to purchase, but that would also have a good return on investment. And then looking at, one thing I didn't add in here, which Lori just mentioned, is the grant funded positions. We have just less than one person in our department that's grant funded, so I can add that in here. But then we looked at our priority services. What we do in Parks and Recreation is not mandated. Nothing is mandated. However, there are some operations that we do that are required under Wisconsin's Safe Place law, as well as there's some grant funding that, for instance, like our motorized recreation coordinator program that we do that helps manage our 29 snowmobile clubs. If we, by state statute, that has to fall under the county for administration. If we didn't do that, another department could, but if the county doesn't do that, then our snowmobile clubs don't get reimbursed for their work that they do on the trail system throughout the county. So I have summarized on the back kind of a colorful bubble picture of all of our services. That's what has come out of that priority-based budgeting as our main core services that we offer, and each one of those can be broken down even further into the specifics of what we do. But overall, that is our summary.
And we'll go to solid waste.
Thank you, Lori. So just a real quick overview for solid waste programs and fee structure. This is a review from what we talked about a couple weeks ago. So solid waste rates and fees, we are not a mandated program. Solid waste departments, nowhere in Wisconsin are they mandated, but once you have a solid waste system in place, you are required to do a number of state and federally regulated laws that you do need to follow. So our fees actually fluctuate annually. Our fees are set by our solid waste management board and our department staff. They're evaluated based on market competition, cost recovery needs. To date, solid waste has always had 100% cost recovery. We have never had to dive into tax levy. So that's something that's unique about our department. But costs are always increasing, and it does get challenging, especially with trying to keep costs low for our community, for our taxpayers, but also being competitive within the market against private sector haulers and landfills. So primary source is selling landfill airspace, and we charge by ton. So a couple of key takeaways on the entire program. So we're not mandated. Cost recovery has been 100%. Annually, we evaluate fees based on market competition, demand, and cost recovery. Programs are set up to serve a substantial portion of the community. We learned this through our priority-based budgeting. There are very few others that are able to provide a similar service this close to our community, and the demand for the program has increased annually over the past decade. The big item for solid waste really in 2024 is the future opportunity. In 2023, we signed an agreement for gas to energy development, which also included a gas royalty, and we are considering and looking into sharing of that gas royalty back into the Marathon County's general fund.
Okay. Just a couple of things I had noted. As far as fleet management, maybe Chris, you can provide some more context here. CPZ, Park, and Forestry are already under the fleet management program that exec has been discussing. I know Public Safety has been discussing a little bit too.
Needs a mic.
Yeah, so for the fleet, there's CPZ and facilities are both actively in it. Parks and Sheriff's Office and Highway have their own fleets, but they have that separate policy for the rolling stock side of it. So I'm not as familiar with Parks fleet just because the focus has been on, for facilities, has been on facilities and capital management and CPZ. But in terms of public safety and the sheriff's office moving in, they've initiated sort of year one of probably a 4-year cycle of moving in that direction. I think there's interest in exploring other departments as well, but I think you got to get a little more planning into it so that you have the funding up front to make that transition right away with the mileage you're already paying plus whatever costs would be involved with getting the number of vehicles you'd need based on staff use. Because for social services, for example, you couldn't just get like a small handful of vehicles because there's more people who would need them. But long story short, if there's financial savings to be gained that way, then we would put that together. But that's still in a preliminary phase, whereas the others are further along.
I was just curious. Solid waste is a little bit different just because of the relationship with the levy, but like for parks vehicles, if that's ever been explored of combining that under one policy with CPZs.
You could. I think that could fall into the rolling stock conversation as well, because I know that it's been carved out somewhat separately because of that policy, having those 3 departments with highway, parks, and sheriff's office as sort of standalones. But those 3 funding levels have been stagnant for, I think, 13 years. So I think even with the sheriff's office, I've got Captain Weber working on what would the ceiling be to operate under that fleet with a full cycle in play, so that you would know, like, if you're at 333,000 today and have been for so long, do you need to be at 425 and then you're good and you go down from there based on the equity you generate? So he's working on that right now, but you'd want to do the same thing for parks, and highway's a little more complicated just because of the nature of their vehicles.
Exactly, yeah.
I can add a little bit to that as well.
Sure.
I think we're talking about 2 different things too. We're talking about the rolling stock amount, which is separate, and then the enterprise contract, which is a completely separate conversation.
I'm talking about the enterprise contract, to be clear.
Okay, so we have reviewed that 2 different times now. We're going through it again, looking at it. But where we have found in our department is it could work for some pickups. It doesn't work for our entire fleet because they don't do some of the bigger equipment, and that's where highway falls in that same thing as well. But we also have a person within our department, as well as highway does, that manages our fleet very closely. And I think if we were to change our policy, so our policy says that we can replace vehicles now after so many years and 100,000 miles, I think. So if we change our policy, which needs to be looked at, we can do a lot of what Enterprise does for the other departments that don't have that ability to manage their fleet like they do. We can do it in-house. We could be trading in our trucks much sooner than what we do now, but it's that policy that we have to look at. So I think we could do a lot of cost savings within our own department just by having that policy looked at.
And just for clarification on a policy, the rolling stock policy, I've got some draft language I put together for Corp Counsel, and I had to look at before we bring it to the administrator for sort of a final review. But that's, I think it's going to be at HR this month for discussion, a draft version of it.
I guess, would that be appropriate to include in a report like this then, Director Polly, or is that so in the future on the horizon that it wouldn't be appropriate? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think as far as like our levy support analysis, it's all looking at cost savings and ways that we could. So I could put it in there as a line item that we're exploring that option, because I do think that is something that we could gain some revenue, or maybe not revenue on, but we could save some money there, but also have our rolling stock just in a much better place as well.
Okay. The other note that I had was with the Conservation Planning and Zoning report, just under department funding breakdown, that first sentence where it reads CPZ's budget impact to levy averages around 35%. If that could be, if another sentence or a few more words could be in there regarding that the reliance of the levy is around 35% of the budget, just another couple words there to fully explain that. Okay. That's all I had. Other thoughts? My idea was then to forward this information to HR Finance when they're beginning these discussions for the budget shortly. So, anything else?
So you want these to move, once with those corrections, we should move them forward?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Just as soon as staff feels comfortable that reflects the committee discussion, I think that's appropriate. I don't think we have to wait. So, Supervisor Unger.
Hi, just a quick question. Jamie, on the revenue breakdown, I see facility rentals is 6%. Is it always been kind of lower, 6%, or is it fluctuated, over the years? Or what would be, potential revenue there? I was just thinking.
Yeah, it's been pretty consistent being 6%. Our shelter fees are fairly low, but I think where the potential comes in, and it's 6% of the whole thing. So when you look at it compared to our timber sales and our campgrounds and our ice time, those are significant numbers. So shelter rentals are a pretty good number, but in the comparison of the larger ones, yeah. Yeah, but I do think, though, with looking at our facilities and some of those facility upgrades, even the general maintenance that we do with our small projects or the things that we put in through CIP, I think we do have potential to raise some of that revenue by making some of our facilities more energy efficient as well as more appealing to the community to want to use.
Jamie, a question for you. Who has ownership of those soccer fields that was a landfill at one time?
That's the county. That's our facility.
And are there rentals fees that come off of that too?
There is, but the sports complex is an enterprise fund, so it's a separate fund from the general levy.
All right. So, like I said, I can support the reports with those changes, and send them off to HR Finance and Property. The last thing I'll end with, and not that I want to end discussion now, because if somebody else has something, please feel free to bring it up. When we get to that process in November, I would certainly appreciate any input on the budget process to please come from this committee. I know last year there was some frustration about it being, how do I say this? It got to be about to the 11th hour, and I know there have been some discussions as far as the budget process themselves and how people felt that it was a constrained time limit as far as how they could provide input on the budget document itself. But I really value this committee system, and I value this committee's input. I would just ask, if you have input, please bring that up as soon as possible so we can get it on an agenda so that we can all talk about it. That's all I ask. I'm willing to call a special meeting even. Okay. You're nodding your head no, but I think the budget's an important document. I just wanted to flow through this committee up. Okay. Any other input for those documents? If not, they'll go off to HR Finance and Property. Let's see here. This is under committee determination. Motion to send these documents to HR Finance with the revisions, I think, would be in order, correct? Okay. I'd entertain a motion. Supervisor Shafinsky?
I would like to make a motion that we forward this to HR Finance and Property.
With those handful of revisions?
With the revisions as noted.
Thank you. Is there a second? Oh. Second by Supervisor Overbeck. All right, any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, motion carries. Down to 8, next meeting, September, no, it's not.
It's not.
October 3rd.
October 3rd, thank you. So that'll be reflected.
We just put that in there to see if you're paying attention. So.
All right, next meeting, October 3rd, 2023, 3 p.m. Assembly Room, future agenda items. A, committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. B, announcements, requests, correspondence. I hope you all had an excellent holiday.
I do have one announcement.
Oh, go ahead, Lori.
We'll put it on next month's agenda, but we are trying to get the dates for the 2024 ERC meetings together. I know Parks and Forestry is also having the conversation because they kind of tend to follow what we do. We do have a drafted one that I'll hand out, but we'll officially discuss it at the next meeting. The big thing to note is that we cannot hold our January meeting on the date that it would typically occur because that is a county holiday. So January 2nd is January 2nd, 2024 will be a county holiday this year because of the 1st and the 31st.
Yeah, don't leave us alone. Who knows what we'll get up to. Kidding.
So we're going to propose to move it to Friday, January 5th is what we're going to do, just looking at the schedule. So I'll give you a printed copy so you can start checking your schedules for now, but we'll talk about it on the next meeting. So.
Okay, sounds good. Anything else? Seeing none, item number 9. Motion by Drabeck. Second by Unger. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff.